Isn't that a great
Yeah.
intro? Thank you again to Peter
Love it.
Romero and Phil Van Drunen. Yeah, it's just a fantastic intro. Um, we worked really hard on that, and let me tell you, there's some really big news coming out of Marketing Tip Tea Time. We are actually going to be, for season 5, which is next season, we're going to be moving Marketing Tip Tea Time to its own brand. So, woo, thank you everyone for supporting us. Just wanted to give that little nugget here before we dive into our guest today, which is our 7th guest of this season, season 4, and that is Kraig Atkins. But first, let me talk about our sponsors who make this entire program possible. First, I'd like to thank Whole Brain Consulting. Whole Brain Consulting is an outsourced operations consultancy that specializes in the consumer products industry, providing solutions catered to your needs. Go to wholebrainconsulting.com for more information. And I'd also like to thank Color World. Color World is your one-stop shop for everything anime. Go to colorworldlive.com for more information. And now I'm going to drum roll a little bit here, and if you notice, look at this. Our mic's not on the table anymore, so I can drum roll without it clipping the mic. Um, Kraig Atkins, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about him. Over the last 16 years, Kraig has owned a small car lot, worked in sales for a franchise location, been a multi-unit finance manager, a finance director for a Toyota location, and a digital marketing director for 3 franchise locations in Fayetteville. Fayetteville? Is that how you pronounce that? Yeah? Arkansas?
That's
Fayetteville?
correct.
Wow,
That's correct.
fantastic. Currently, Kraig has transitioned his career to a marketing agency where they offer full service marketing to automotive dealerships. Please help me in welcoming Kraig. Here he is. Woo! Hey,
Hey,
Kraig.
everybody. How are y'all doing? Yes.
I'm doing great. How are you doing? How's the weather where you're at? Where are you located?
Uh, so right now I'm actually in Birmingham, Alabama.
Okay. Yep.
Weather is fantastic right now. I'm glad I'm actually not flying home tonight because I understand the weather is supposed to be pretty rough in our area.
Yeah.
So I'm glad I'm in Birmingham, but I'm actually at the agency today.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, it's snowing. Well, it snowed last night here in Colorado. So, yeah, the weather's getting
Nope.
wintry.
Mm-mm. Mm-mm.
All right.
I'm a
Well,
no-go on that one.
yeah. I like snow for a little bit, and then
Hmm.
after about the first time I have to scrape my car, then I'm then I'm pretty much done with it.
Done.
Yep, exactly. Well, thank you for being on the show. For anybody who's watching, Kraig was recommended by Ryan, who you all might have, remembered, Ryan Green, who
Hmm.
is the marketing
Hmm.
director at the Yoder family conglomerate of
Hmm.
everything. So they have Weld County Garage, and
Hmm.
he said, Kraig's your man, and so here he is on the show today. Um, we're just happy to have you. We're just happy to have you.
Man,
Um,
it's a pleasure to be here with you guys.
Thank you. And for anybody watching, please wave, drop a little, wave emoji into the comments. Or if you have any questions during the show, we'll try and get those in as time permits. But first thing we're gonna do is we're actually gonna talk about the tea that Kraig wanted.
Hmm. Hmm.
He said sweet tea.
Hmm.
Do you have any stories behind? And I'm gonna actually try it. Let's see if we can get the snap
Yes.
of the let's see here. I don't want to ruin any of our technology, but I also want to get this really crispy. Let's see if we can. Ooh. Oh yeah,
Mm.
there we go.
We got a little click.
Did we get it? Oh, nice, perfect. Do you have any stories behind sweet tea or the reason that you chose this?
You know, I don't know that I really have any specific stories outside of that's the way that I grew up. I actually came from South Arkansas, and it was not every meal, but there was always sweet tea in the house. And it didn't matter
Oh
what
wow.
family member or where we were at. That's just the way we grew up. Unsweet tea
Yep.
was an option, not my option, but it was an option. And so
Right.
nothing specific, but um, just sweet tea in general.
Fantastic. Well, we shipped a box of I think 20 pure leaf sweet teas to Kraig because
Yeah.
Amazon was not clear on what I was sending. And so here we go. We're gonna try it. It's pure leaf sweet tea, real brewed
Hmm.
tea.
Yeah. Hmm.
Oh,
It's
that's
actually pretty
good.
good.
That is really good.
Hmm.
Yeah, have you ever had
That's
this
good.
brand
Good
before? Or
flavor. I have, yeah.
yeah, that is good. That is a good tea. Wow. I don't know. We'll have to ask Brandon from Whole Brain, our sponsor, how they do this, how they brew it and bottle it, and he knows all about that.
Yeah.
But this is a great tea. This is kind of a front porch, back porch, sipping during the
Yes,
summer,
it is.
some iced tea. Yeah, this is great.
Yep.
All
Out on
right,
the
and we don't.
lake, out by the
Yeah,
pool. Yeah.
exactly. And we don't have a tea cam today, but you get to watch us drink this tea. You can get this at your
Yeah.
local wherever because this is at 7-Eleven, this is at King Supers, this is all over the place. So go get yourself a bottle. We'll just dive into the questions though now, I guess. First thing we'll do is sort of a rapid fire, Craig, and I'll say this or
Mm-mm.
that or your favorite, whatever, and just first thing that comes to your mind. Just blurt it out. Favorite car
Let's
brand?
go. Chevrolet or Ram?
Okay. Mailers or emails?
Whoo, man, I've got to go with mailers all day long on that one. No, no, no
Really?
email. No, mailers.
Wow.
Hmm.
Wow. Okay. Okay. TikTok or Vine?
I've got to go with TikTok. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't say this. I don't know a whole lot about Vine, to be honest with you. I know a lot about
Yeah.
TikTok. So TikTok,
Perfect. Yeah.
hands down.
TikTok. Well, Elon has said that with him taking over Twitter, the first thing he wants to do is relaunch Vine. So we'll see if that comes back. Good
We'll
old
see what
Musk.
happens. You know,
Yeah.
anything's possible.
Yep. Anything is possible. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. All right. So, tell us a little bit about your journey getting into automotive marketing. How did you get started? How did you get to where you're at now? What does that look like?
So I think most of my journey really started whenever I was, 16, 17, 18. And even before that, my family has always been into uh, drag racing. My dad and his brothers, they were always into drag racing. And so, having that car in the garage or a specific brand was always important for some reason to us. Uh, as I grew up, it was always, man, I want to have this car. I want to have that truck. And then probably in my late teens, early 20s, I had several vehicles, but it was always I just loved vehicles, right? I mean,
Yeah.
from Corvettes to trucks to the Dodge Cummins or a Camaro. The last what
Mm-hmm.
was when did Camaro stop making in 2001, and then they relaunched out again.
Yep.
Um, and so I had to have it, right? And I think what really got me started, hopefully this number doesn't scare anybody, but I have probably owned and driven personally somewhere in the neighborhood of about 75 or 80 vehicles personally, that I've had in my
Wow.
possession. I know, so I've
Woo.
went through a few. And so I actually started in the restaurant business. After the restaurant business, I had kind of started dabbling into what you mentioned previously about a small used car lot that I had. And that was kind of
Yeah.
my switch of, okay, if I'm going to slow down spending money on buying cars and negative equity or whatever, hey, let's just start a car lot, see how it goes, right? So it was definitely not what I expected, but I enjoyed it, because I got to drive the different vehicles, I got to be in around it, and so I started my own used car lot.
Yeah.
I was selling a few cars there in Monticello, Arkansas. After that, I actually got out of the restaurant business and had already gotten out of the used car lot, and so that's where I was trying to find a new career path, and I started actually working for an automotive group there in Northwest Arkansas. Um, Started in a manager program, and we started in sales and moved my way up into finance, and that was actually for Mazda, BMW, Mercedes, and Cadillac.
Wow.
Started doing finance for those guys for several years. From there, I went on. That's where you also mentioned about being a not a marketing director, but a finance director. So I went over to a good sized Toyota store where that I was the finance director. And
Wow.
one thing just leads to the next, right? And it's just then the path just starts to mold itself. And I
Yeah.
ended up at another group there in Northwest Arkansas and started to do marketing. And actually did the marketing for a group there in Fayetteville for about 7 years. And
Wow.
opportunity kind of came up to be where I'm at now, and that's Strong Automotive here in Birmingham, Alabama. And so I jumped on the position, and that's where I'm at. So it's just been one step after the next, and here I am.
That's great though. That it sounds like your passion for cars and just
Mm-hmm.
all sorts of automobiles, trucks, Camaro, just sort of sparked this interest, and you just ended up exactly where you were supposed to be, sort of serendipitously.
Right? Yeah.
Wow. That's pretty cool. And speaking of all of, all this journey of, moving from one car dealership or even the restaurant industry into cars and doing all of this. Essentially, it sounds like you were allowing yourself to really be with your passion, and that this helped you to also drive
Mm-hmm.
and own and experience
Mm-hmm.
more cars.
Mm-hmm.
But I bet also
Mm-hmm.
you met a lot of amazing people along the way, and maybe some mentors who helped get you to that next level. You mentioned that management program. Did you have any mentors that were just
Mm-hmm.
really, really good to you, really stuck out and got you pretty far? Do you have any stories about
You
that?
know, to pinpoint just one person, I don't know that I can just pinpoint one person, right? I think that each place, there were several people. Um, when I worked for the Superior Group, one of the first times in 2012 when I stepped into a dealership, and Jim Teeter was kind of a platform director there, and Jim was just no just major stories. He just saw that I was hungry. Kind of
Mm.
crazy enough, the way I started was I actually drove from South Arkansas to Northwest Arkansas, drove 5 hours just for a job interview. And him and I sat down, we had an interview, and then I sat down and immediately had, I think, another meeting that afternoon when they realized, wow, this guy drove 5 hours just for a job interview at a car dealership, basically starting in sales. That's unheard of, right? You just don't do that. Who
Yeah.
drives 5 hours for that? And so he
Not me.
immediately
I'll
got on the
tell you.
phone with, you know, most people don't. They're barely going to
Yeah.
drive 30 minutes to go anywhere. And so he
Right.
got on the phone with the owner of the group at the time, and he was like, "Man, this guy, we could hire him. I'm sure he's got the credentials. That's not a problem. But he drove 5 hours. What are we supposed to do with this?" And he actually told me that story actually a couple years later, and the his boss, the owner, was like, "You hire the guy right now. You don't wait. If he's going to take
Wow.
that kind of drive." And I
Yeah.
stayed with some of my kinfolk at the time, but Jim was always there, and he believed in me from the get go. He helped me. He mentored me. He actually saw in me the ability, the talent, and maybe it wasn't just one specific thing that he had done, but it was just, it was a set of things that he had done. And I
Yeah.
will tell you one other piece. As I was with the Lewis Group for about 7 years, and that's kind of what has really probably taken my career in automotive kind of to the next level, was being with Lewis Automotive Group. And something he shared with me when I started early on with him, and I've taken it with me, and I actually wrote it down, as a pointer. Um, he taught me early on when I was working with an employee that I was kind of overseeing. And he said, Craig, in everything we do, we got to be proactive and not
Mm.
reactive. And he said, the more that you're proactive in
Yep.
everything that you do, then reactive is less painful. Whenever you're reactive, it's more expensive, it's more painful, there's more problems, there's more issues, it's longer, it takes,
Mm-hmm.
and that's in everything. Just think about maintenance on a car, maintenance on a building. When we're proactive, we prevent more issues and headache down the road. And so,
Yeah.
in all my day to day, from planning or strategy or from marketing, whatever it is, as long as we're proactive, it sets the stage to be more successful.
Wow. So essentially you found some really great people, and then at Lewis Automotive they really taught you this proactive versus reactive, how to plan, how to look kind of into your crystal ball, which people think at marketing, and we can kind of predict things sometimes, and they think, "What the heck? How are you coming up with that?" And they say the marketing crystal ball is what I've heard a lot, but it's really just informed decisions
Mm-hmm.
and doing the research and looking
Mm-hmm.
at what's actually happening.
Mm-hmm.
So that's great. We have a question from Brandon Hernandez, who is the owner of Whole Brain and is one of the sponsors of the show. He says, "What's the major difference besides money in thinking about advertising for a used lot versus a new lot?"
Repeat that for me one more time.
So, what's the major difference, or what's a major difference besides money in advertising for a used car lot versus a new car lot?
So, besides money, there's a lot of difference. When you get into the used marketing side of things, your competition is fierce because there is a used car lot. Your new car lots have used cars. There could be, a ton of used car lots that are out there, but everybody's advertising used, right? So that makes that a very
Right.
competitive market. Now, when you're in the new side of things, yeah, there may be another Ford competitor. There might be another domestic brand that you might be competing against, but so your target with the new is just like a Ford versus a Ford, if that makes sense. Ford's not necessarily going to be going against Acura or Porsche or there's not a lot of cross
Hmm.
marketing there, if that makes sense. But whenever
Yeah.
you're in used, everybody has used, right? And
Right.
so that really makes that strategy a lot tougher, especially whenever it is for an independent lot. They would have to dump a lot of money into other parts of the strategy.
Right. So so then is you say that between brands for the new side, there's not a lot of direct competition. So
Mhm.
would that sort of brand loyalty competition and market share competition be really happening at the national level, where that is like Ford's national advertising versus GMC's national advertising? Like those are the ones that are competing essentially for the lot then to gain that micro bit of market share, or
There, if you're in a local area, so if we look back at the Northwest Arkansas market where we were at, if there are relative brands, so if you have two Ford brands, yes, it can be a knockdown drag out, right? So they
right,
can go head to head, with those brands. The biggest difference is you're not going to have a lot of cross with a Ford versus, like I said, an Acura, right?
right,
So your biggest competition is either going to be Ford, Toyota, Chevrolet. There is a
right,
ton of competition. Obviously, when you get into tier one, which is going to be your manufacturers, obviously there's a ton of competition. And it depends on how far they get into your regions and into your markets. You take larger markets, heavy population. So you take Dallas or you take your Denver areas, right? Those areas
yeah,
are going to be even more fierce for the manufacturer because there's more population, right? More opportunity.
right.
But
Okay, that
hopefully that gives you a little bit
answered
of
that question.
explanation.
Yeah, yeah, no, it really did. Um, wow, it's just so fascinating how the regions and then your like
Mm-hmm.
sales, because I know that there are also like what would it be, like a sales region, like sometimes a
A DMA.
Ford. Yeah, yeah, things like that. It's really interesting how the different car manufacturers and car dealerships work within those DMA regions and within those
Mm-hmm.
geographies,
Mm-hmm.
and how internally they figure out, okay, this is the type of market share I want going into here, and this is how we might be able to build that. So fascinating. It really, it's really
It is.
cool.
It really is. There's a
Um,
lot that goes into
yeah.
it, and you'll hear a lot of dealers talk about, either pump in or pump out, and that has to do with somebody outside of the DMA coming into your market. And
Mm,
so, do you really want that, right? Yeah, we do
right.
want that for a car sale, but we're not going to have them for service moving down the road. And so, it's it's justifying being able to get someone outside of your market to bring them in because your longevity of that client is really just really the purchase, and that's where it stops.
Oh, wow. I didn't realize that.
Mhm.
Within this competition, which is fierce sometimes, how do you market cars without on the dealership level without sounding super car salesy? Because there's a stigma that exists, right? And so how do you do that? How do you entice people? How do you make the messaging so it's not, the car salesman sort of spiel?
Everything today goes back to the relationship that you build.
Mm,
And when you begin to build that relationship, you begin to build that connection. Social media has allowed us to start connecting with our customer base in a whole new role. You know, you advertise what you do, who you are, what uh, who do you support in the community, right? So if you're supporting a school or if you're supporting different um, I'm trying to think of the right word, but different benefits that are inside of your community. Uh,
yeah.
if like with the Lewis Automotive Group, they were large into outdoors and biking and running, and so obviously some of our brands, some of who we connected with became that same culture, right? So I think when you start to build relationships, period, then you don't have to come across as salesy, right?
Right.
Because then you can come across all of a sudden now you're in their world, they're in your world, and next thing you know, you're talking about everybody's world is everybody. Most people need transportation of some sorts, right?
Right.
And so when you build that relationship, then that's just it just kind of becomes the standard pattern. And next thing you know, you're talking about a car, or you're talking about what's available, or it just kind of segues itself instead of being so blunt of hitting somebody in the face with that radio talk of, buying a car for 3.9, 60 months, they get off fast and tell you all the
Yeah.
disclaimers. And that's what is synonymous with a car dealer. And I think it's being a little bit more laid back and building a relationship. And it takes you a long ways.
Yeah. No, that's great. And so when you're building out these relationships, when you mentioned social media is a great platform for trying to build relationships, how are you using data, either first party or third party, to then build out some of these relationships and help you to segment and know which strategies and tactics you should be using just to build the relationship and to make decisions marketing wise?
Data is a conversation that either somebody wants to have or they really don't want to have it at all.
Yeah.
Is what you find out. Some people, some dealerships, some clients, they want to know all the data. Let's dig into the deep side of this. And there are some that are like, okay, tell me some of the the very high end metrics, and let's move on. Um,
Mm,
but data can be used in such good ways so that you can see um, where the traffic's coming from, what kind of conversions are we getting, what can we actually quantify, and what's important to you, to a dealer. When you start to actually know what's important to a dealer, whether it's sales or whether it's service or what they're really looking for, then you can look back into the data and know, do we need to drive more traffic here? Do we have enough impressions? Are we getting the conversions? Do we have the right message out there? So data can be
right.
used in so many ways, but also data can work against you. And what I mean by that is when you let data just consume you,
Mm,
then you may make just you have to let your gut. Let's just go with that. You have to, maybe that's not the right word, and breaking it down real simple is your gut. You
yeah.
hire people who know cars, know the market. When they know that world, they can use their gut and know whether something's right or wrong. So I think when you take all of the data
Yeah.
factors that you can get to know what platforms, what cultures, what diversities are we in, where do we need to market? My brand is a Nissan brand. What cultures or what diversities you hate to even say that, but what cultural diversities are driving that car or budget, right? What budget
Right.
realm can we put these Nissans in and make sure that we're marketing to the right households that can afford our car and that actually want our product, right? And it fits their needs.
Yeah.
But biggest thing of data is you can overplay data. Um, you can overplay it, and I think you have to be able to trust your gut. And so I would say to anybody who's looking at data, it's great, a lot of numbers, and it can tell you a lot, but I think you have to trust your gut at the end of the day.
I like that a lot. I like that a lot. The ability to trust your gut. And I feel like some people they're not so tuned into their gut, I guess is maybe a way to put it, and so they over rely on data to try and justify
Mm-hmm.
every single
Mm-hmm.
decision. Um, and the thing I had a research professor who once said that there's what was it that basically you can take math, you can take data, you can take statistics, and you can sort of do whatever you want with it if you really want. So he said there's lies, there's damn lies, and then there's statistics. is is what he said. And so, I think that having that aspect of trusting your people and relying on relationships and trusting their
Mm-hmm.
gut and trusting your
Mm-hmm.
gut is important as well. But along the lines of data, Brandon Hernandez also asks, what kind of ROI should a dealership expect? Like, if to be a good dealership, what's sort of the ROI that's a good area to land in?
That is a very tough question. Um,
I
and the
thought it would
reason
be.
why I don't know that I can, yeah, I don't know that I can quantify that for you, right? So what I can tell you, so let's break that apart a little bit because that's huge, right? Because if you take, say, one vendor that you're using, and let's say vendors do get you leads, well, you typically want either a 4 to 5 return on those on that spend, right? You want to see four to
Hmm.
five times that spend come back to you, typically,
Okay.
at minimum. But an overall, it depends on your area. It depends on, are
Okay.
you a new store? Have you been there for a long time? It depends on your market share. It depends if you're coming into a store and let's say a dealer comes in and buys a store and it's got a terrible reputation. Well, you're going to spend a lot of money to correct all of that, right?
Right.
And so saying what can my ROI be, there's a lot of questions there, and you break that down from wow, okay, so how much is the manufacturer paying for? Right. And so do I include that or do I not include what the manufacturer helps to pay for from a co-op standpoint? So
Right.
we've had those discussions in Internet 20 groups all day long. And, I'm going to say, just breaking it down, I think that from a marketing standpoint, a lot of dealers are probably spending roughly 20%. They're putting back into marketing on average. And some don't have to spend very much because it's such a natural area, right? And if your
Right.
natural area is having the growth, then you don't have to spend as much. However,
Right.
you may live in way out in the country somewhere, and there's no immediate. You could live out in the middle of cornfields and in the middle of Illinois, for all we know, and no one's in a 45-minute driving, so you're going to have to really pull pretty hard. So you
Right.
can either stick with the population that's around you, or you've got to reach out. There is not a single person who can tell you this is what your budget return should be at. I think that is going to be per each location and each dealer specifically.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. And we're gonna start wrapping up the show here because we're right at 30 minutes. But I've got one last question for you, and that
Yeah,
is, what is the next big thing in automotive marketing? What should everybody be excited about?
changes and more changes. You know,
Yep.
I think that the biggest thing in marketing of what we're seeing right now is you take GA4 has been a huge discussion across the board, and that's Google Analytics. You know, Google is
Hmm.
going away from GA3, they're going to GA4. I think it's going to be everything in marketing is going to go how we view the results, right? And you look at how GA4 is changing that. That's
Right.
huge. Facebook is constantly making changes every day.
Oh
We get in
gosh.
there to do
Oh
it's
yeah,
nonstop, right? But
it is.
I'm not seeing anything overly huge. What I'm seeing is there are constant changes, and I think everybody's chiseling away right now.
Right.
And as GA4 starts, I think it's how we view that consumer with like online shopping, online
Yeah.
retailing is the customer engagement. I think the biggest word that I've heard is customer engagement. That's the phrase that I keep
Right.
hearing is customer engagement. How do we view that? How do we handle that? And that really is it's not how long they're on the website any longer. It's are they
Right.
engaging with your website?
And do you use the Google vehicle ads at all, or have you? Because
Mm-mm.
that's sort of a
Mm.
new development
It
from
is.
Google. Yeah.
VLAs are pretty strong. They're going to make a big run, I think, with third-party vendors like AutoTrader, Cars.com.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be an asset for dealers. I will tell you the biggest thing that I have seen dealing with clients in the last 30 days is the results from PMAX. I'm sure everybody has been. Uh, it's one of the biggest returns is PMAX campaigns coming from Google. I
Wow.
think even compared to VAs, I think that's even a larger portion that a lot of guys aren't even they're not even playing in
Really?
that field yet.
Wow. Yeah.
Hmm.
No. For sure. That is some great advice and great stories from you, Craig. We really appreciate you being on the show again, and we're right at the little past 30 minutes, so we're gonna go ahead and wrap up here. Is there any last bit of advice you want to tell anyone? If not, that's fine. You don't have to, but we always ask at the end here.
I don't think I have any advice. I think that automotive world culture, whether it's marketing or sales, is fantastic. And once you get
Yeah.
into it, either people either love it or they hate it. But I think
Right.
it's just
Right.
a
Right.
necessary evil for us. So no real advice except for just give it a try.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Craig. We really appreciate you coming on the show, and thank you to Ryan Green who gave us the shout to reach out to Craig, and thank you to all of our sponsors and everybody who helps put this show on, including Bike Shop Agency, our producers, and Josh French upstairs, Peter Romero, Phil Van Drunen, Alyssa Youngval, Sheridan Youngval, everyone. Thank you so much. Again, great headway that we're really next season is going to be mind blowing, hopefully, and so we're really going to be working on season 5. And please like, subscribe, share. If this episode spoke to you at all, or if you have further questions that you want to ask, please email us, like, share, tell all of your friends. If you have any friends that are in the automotive world, they can probably get something out of this show for sure. So please, everyone, have a great rest of your weekend. I guess today's Friday. Our show's always on Friday. And until next time, which is in 2 weeks, Nastravi. Cheers. Thank you, Craig.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it, guys.
All right.